I am here today to tell you pin making is not cheap, but it is fun. A lot of people ask me why I get into pin making, and this is legitimately the conversation that went down between a coworker and I. They heard I had a lathe in my workshop, and I told them, yeah, I got one from my grandpa that my dad gave me. And they were like, you should get into making pins because the guy on the square makes a lot of money doing it. So I was like, sure, why not? What could go wrong? So about $14,000 later in the past 2 years, I've made about $6,700. What do I use to make pins? The lathe I use in the bottom is a Nova Comet 2. You don't need it, but a drill press comes in handy because you have to drill the center of the pin blanks out. A disc sander comes in handy also for sanding the ends of the blanks flush with the metal tube. And a miter saw, a bandsaw, table saw, some sort of way to chop it down to the right length. And I use carbide tip chisels. You can make do with smaller, cheaper ones, but I went with the big ones because I also like to turn bowls. You're going to need a pin mandrel. This allows you to take the bushings, pin blank, put it together like this up here, and what that does is it holds it really tight so that when it's spinning at 4,000 RPMs it doesn't catch on your chisels. The bushings, you don't have to have bushings, you can do it the old-fashioned way and use calipers. This is a lot easier because it guides you on each end. You know where you need to be flush at. The center can be anything you want, but in order to match up with the metallic parts, it needs to be flush with the bushings. And then if you decide to finish with CA glue, you'll need some CA glue. You also can use CA glue, Gorilla Glue, 5-minute epoxy, any strong adhesive to glue the metal tube into the pin blank. And I used to use sandpaper, to sand them, but now I prefer the Mercamesh. I didn't bring any with me, but I use Zona paper to polish instead of Micromesh. And for the very last piece I do is I use Hut Ultra Polish, and that gives it the last little bit of shine that it needs. So I've spent a few grand on equipment and supplies, now what? I broke this up into phases because I've learned that assembly lining the process allows you to make more pins in the same amount of time. Phase 1 is to get your preparation done. You want to pick a blank, any kind of blank you want, and then you pick the kit that you're going to want to go with it. And every kit has its own set of bushings. So then you find your set of bushings, and if you don't keep track of them, then you waste more money buying some more bushings.
Waste of experience.
Yep. Once you found the correct bushings and you got everything ready, you got to trim the blanks. You actually take the metal tube out of the package. And normally these are longer, but you cut it down so that it's the right length. and leave about a 1/16 to a, or more on each end of it, so that if you're drilling it and the acrylic or wood splinters at the end, you have enough where you can sand it off so that it's that you can still use it. And once you do that, you take it over to the drill press, or you can drill it on your lathe if you have that set up. And if you're really desperate, you can use a hand drill. I wouldn't recommend the hand drill. And then once you have the hole drilled, you glue it. And buy one of these nifty little jigs for your disc sander. I think this was about $20, well worth the $20. But you take just a punch set that you can get at Harbor Freight, and you match the one that's closest to the diameter of your tube. You slide it in there, and you just sand. It gives you a nice flush surface when you sand it with the disc sander. Phase 2. Mount and turn. Now it's the fun part. The actually only fun part. You mount it, you put the bushings on, the blank, and then I turn all my pins at 4,000 RPMs. I tried to think of a way to tell you how I do it. It's not something that I can put into words. It's something you need to just kind of watch, and which is why I was hoping to do a demo, but it would have been too much sawdust and strings of resin up in the air, and probably would have got caught in the chandelier. And once you have it turned down to the shape you want, that's one of my mess ups, where it was a coloring pencil, and at the very end, part of the coloring pencil flew out. But once you have it turned down, you sand it some more, and then when you think you're done sanding, you sand it a little bit more. But there's some more examples of mounting the pin blanks in the lathe.
What's the green one?
Resin.
It's resin.
Yeah.
Is the finished product ink pens? Is that what
Yes.
you're talking about?
Correct.
Gotcha.
This was, this is when I did it for a custom order. The customer asked me to make them a $200 pen. So I spent about 3 days working on this. This one's, it's 300 and something, 2mm by 2mm by 2mm squares, all glued up together in a spiral.
What's the minimum wage?
And make nothing so far.
I mean,
Do you
you
have
get
a-
into woodworking because you like doing it, not because you want
Yeah.
the money.
Do you have a picture of that finished square pin?
I do. It's my. It was the profile picture on my
Oh,
submission.
I'm sorry.
I might have one in here again. I'm not sure. I made these slides like a month and a half ago. Phase 3 for wood. I broke it up into 2 different phases because I do wood differently than resin. With wood, I dry sand the wood to 400 grit, wipe it down with denatured alcohol, and before applying the CA finish, I lightly sand with 400 again.
I'm glad you cleared up the DNA with the denatured alcohol. I was thinking blood from your knuckles.
Well, I have cut myself numerous times, and of course, this fingertip right here I nearly cut it off completely. It's a bloody business woodworking. But once I do the CA finish, CA is basically like a type of super glue, and you just apply numerous thin layers onto the pin as it's spinning slowly. And once I have the CA finish done, I use Zona paper in increments from 300 or 330 micron down to 1 micron.
What
And
is
it-
CA again?
It's cyano acrylic.
Super glue.
Yeah, it's super glue. It's a special super glue. I use Mercury Flex, which is designed to flex a little so that it won't completely crack. And then I polish with a polishing cloth, and sometimes, depending on whether or not I still see fine scratches, I will buff with Jeweler's Rouge. But it really just, some of them, I do the polishing and it looks great. Some of them, it needs a little bit more help. I haven't found the rhyme or reason. I don't know if it's something in my process that I'm doing differently, or if I'm having a bad day, or,
Humidity.
yeah, I mean. Phase 3 for resin. I like resin because it makes a ginormous mess. And if you get it just right, you get these long ribbons that just keep coming off. And during phase 3, I wet sand to 400 grit. I may or may not apply a CA finish. It depends on if it's got wood in it, really. If I'm doing a hybrid, then I'll do a CA finish. And then the rest of it's just like doing the wood. Phase 4 is assembly. That sounds easy. And normally it is easy, except for when the distributor sends you, you're putting together a nice fancy fountain pen, and they send you 2 of the same part and not one of the other, and you're sitting there trying to, and not all of them have pictures either. A lot of them are just words where they're like, tell you to put this and this and this, and so that's been a steep learning curve also, is just being able to decipher some, it's probably converted over from Chinese or something, but a lot of them just don't make any sense. Step 5's profit. The problem with that is I only have so many friends and family to sell pins to. And after going to my first show, I found out there's 2 other pin turners in my small town also. And I also found out that Etsy charges out the ass in fees. But it's easy and funnels random people to my site. It doesn't take nearly the work that it would trying to run my own site and advertise. So it's kind of worth them taking 40 to 50% of.
Like a marketing budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I had a budget.
Right.
Phase 6, denial. Keep telling yourself, eventually, I'm going to start making some money. Meanwhile, I develop an addiction for cool-ass pens, and I start swapping with other pen makers around the world. I work more overtime at my day job, so that I can pay to make more pens. And then this past summer, I dropped another grand on an air conditioner because when it's 100 plus degrees outside in a metal building, it's not very cool. Now that I'm in deep, why not try to save some money? Start making my own pen blanks. Saving. That's an example of one of the blocks I've turned recently. It had some, it's actually the one this one's made out of, it's got some glow in the dark in it. It's not a pressure cooker, it's a pressure pot. It's a converted big spray paint, like automotive painter, that I kind of feel bad for destroying, kind of, because it was like $1,000, almost brand new paint pot that had like the automatic mixer and everything in it, and I just ripped that out and bolted it up with some JB weld to seal it up, and built the contraption up top to show me the pressure. I've got the emergency release valve on it in case for some reason I put too much pressure in it so it doesn't blow up in my face. And it's got I don't know how well it works, but it's supposed to filter the water out so that water doesn't get into the pressure pot from the air hose. Down here we have my casting bench. It's covered with HDPE, 1/8" material, because you can just wipe or pop the resin right off of it. It's the same material that the molds are made out of that make it easy to just remove any resin. I just let it dry and then pop it off maybe twice a year. What could go wrong? I learned the hard way that silicone molds are only good for so many times, and then the oils in them are sucked out by the epoxy, and it dries them up to the point where they stick. You go to pull the tube out, or the blank out of the mold, and it just pulls part of the mold with it. I also learned the hard way that you only have so much time to work when it's 100 degrees in your shop and the Alumilite is ready to be put in the pot at 95. And that's just, I put it in the pot after work, and then I completely forgot to put pressure in the pot. And this is an example of what it would look like without the pressure. And when you put it in the pressure pot, it doesn't remove the bubbles, it doesn't make the bubbles come out. It actually compresses them so small that they're microscopic. And then that's why you have to keep it under pressure until it's fully cured. If you drop the pressure before it's cured, those bubbles will expand again and just crack your resin up. I haven't learned that one. I've only read about it. But in the end, it's worth it. I'm one of about 12 people in the world that have figured out how to put playing cards inside of resin on a pin tube. As far as I know, I'm only one of 2 that does it with collectible card games. I can now make my own colors here and make gifts. I gave that one to my mom for Mother's Day. And here's that spiral one finished. The $200 special order. On the far right there was a retirement gift for my supervisor of 15 years. My day job is in telecom, and that was, all those pens and the display were made from wood that was pulled from a wooden test panel that was removed in 1989 by another coworker. So I was able to take some of that wood that they had salvaged and had sitting around, and I turned pens out of it and gave it to them as a graduation or retirement gift. And also, 5-star reviews on Etsy are kind of addicting. Now it's time for the live demo. So they wouldn't let me, not Larry wouldn't let me turn. So I'm going to be making an Alumilite block. I'm going to be using blood red, spruce green, and antique gold. And I'm going to try to make it like a Christmassy color type.
If we took it outside, would you be able to turn?
We could if I brought my lathe with me. If that's something you want me to do next year,
No.
I can do it outside, yeah. First, you want to start with some gloves.
That's what the officer said.
Now,
In the loop.
you really don't want to get it on your hands, and from experience, if you get it on your clothes, the clothes are trash. Because the resin will harden, and that doesn't sound so bad until the resin then cracks after you wash it. And then your clothes have big like cracks because it breaks apart the fabric and everything.
And your washer has resin.
No, because before I wash it, I let it dry.
Oh.
So this block right here takes 600 grams. Alumilite is a 1-to-1 A to B side by weight. I'm going to be doing 250 grams of red, 250 grams of green, and 100 grams of gold. So I just want the gold to be kind of like an accent color. We're going to start by pouring 125 of A, 125 of A, and 50 of A. And these are brand new bottles because Tuesday I went to start packing and I found out that my hardener had completely crystallized. It had been so long since I used it. Because I prefer to use Royal Palm resin now. It's got a longer work time. So I can do more than just 2 or 3 colors if I wanted to. But due to the limited time frame here, I'm going with Alumilite Slow because it's got a work time of 12 minutes. And then I can demold it in 2 to 4 hours. And the 12-minute timer doesn't actually start until I mix the B side in.
So the colors, are those Alumilite as well?
The colors are, most of my coloring that I use is from Caster's Choice. It's a powdered mica.
So it's not glitter then, right?
No. But you can use glitter.
If we wanted to commission you to make a glitter pen for someone,
I can. But just like normal glitter, when I turn it, it gets all over the shop like glitter aids.
Of course it does.
Airport.
But yes, I've made a few pens out of glitter. Although I've started, when I want a glittery effect, I order some. There's a gentleman out there, Tim McKenzie, that makes blanks with diamond dust. And it's a lot more sparklier than glitter.
How's that on your carbide tools?
Cuts right through it.
Huh. Diamond
Because
dust.
it's not cutting the diamonds.
Just shaving them off.
Yeah, they're really fine particles.
It's like knocking it off.
is that the B side?
This is the coloring, the mica color. It's a very fine dust. It specifically says don't breathe it in because I'm assuming some dumbasses breathe it in. Or but the more you use, the better. Obviously, you don't want to just dump a whole thing in because this costs about $5 a jar.
How flammable is all this stuff?
I don't know, and I don't want to find out. If you find out, let me know.
No, might be able to.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, Caster's Choice makes some pretty good colors. But I've learned from experience, if you don't use enough, then when you turn it down, and if you're doing a pen with a very thin edge, you will be able to see through to the tube, the brass tube. So by having too much mica, you make it less likely to be able to see through in the thin spots.
Wiping the sides.
Yep. To just try to get it mixed in universally right now, but when I mix the B side in, scraping the sides will be to make sure it's uniformly mixed.
You ever tried cutting the end of the stick so it's square, so you can scrape the bottom better?
No. Sounds like too much work.
And the bottom isn't perfectly flat, it has a little ridge on it, and you can also introduce wood chips into it unless you sand it after you cut it. But the bottom isn't perfectly flat.
When you first mix it in, you don't want to like just jab in there and start going at it. You want to kind of gently mix it in. Otherwise, you're going to have a poof of mica into your face. All right, now that the colors are mixed up, I'll put it on the scale and reset it so that it's 0. And now we're going to start with the B side.
Is there any kind of reaction, like heat or anything that happens? When you
Yes, it's a thermic reaction. It's going to create heat. This I'm going to test it for the temperature, and when it gets up to, when 2 of the colors get to 95 is when I'll mix it in and pour it in the mold.
So you're pouring equal amounts of A and B?
Yep,
By weight.
by grams, yeah.
And the sticks negligible.
He
I,
zeroed it.
I zeroed it out after.
Joe, do you do some of this too?
Oh, yeah. But with salt.
0 and then pouring out to the number again.
But the stick wasn't in the first time.
But it doesn't matter what it weighs right now, because when I put it on and I hit 0,
That's true.
it now has a weight of 0.
Yeah, okay, just, that was there.
And now you mix. About the next 5 minutes we'll probably be mixing.
Does it thicken?
Yes. As it starts to set up and cure, it gets thicker. And it's at 95 degrees. There should be enough thickness that it won't, when you pour it in, all the colors won't just mesh together. There'll be a degree of separation. And I'm scraping the sides to make sure I get any of the part A that was on the side mixed in with part B in the center. And before we started, I sprayed the mold with urethane mold release, so that when I take it out in the morning, it will hopefully pop out a little easier. If not, I brought a hammer.
There's a guy in the next room that probably has a bunch of hammers.
Well, I'm pretty sure anyone around room 158 hated me this afternoon when I charged my air compressor. But if anyone asked, it wasn't me.
It's the other guy with the air.
Right now, that one's 83, 77, and 79. And the way I'm measuring it is I'm stirring it and then lifting the popsicle stick up and measuring it on the popsicle stick to get a more accurate reading of the internal temperature, because the resin on the top will start to cool off and you won't get an accurate reading of what the temperature is inside. So it will trick you into making you think that it's not as hot as it is, and then it'll start setting up on you too quick.
Does it feel warm holding it with the glove?
Yeah.
Cool.
No more.
Not too warm, but you can tell there's a reaction going on.
Informative.
'87, 84, 81.
And starts.
Yep. I know historically from dealing with these micas, for some reason the red heats up quicker than the other colors. I'm sure there's a scientific explanation.
You started first?
No, even if it's the last one, it'll warm up
Okay.
quicker than the other colors.
If you could do like a cheap Arduino thermo probe and just stir it with that, have a constant readout on an LCD.
You could probably do that.
But this is fun too.
That would be 14,000 and plus one. The investment just keeps growing and growing. Instead of shrinking and shrinking, shrinking. But overhead video cam, the stern.
Thermal imaging camera.
He's got one.
He's got a probe. Yeah, I got one of my bag of those. Yeah.
I brought an ultraviolet one.
Yeah, I got a FLIR.
I got an ultraviolet one.
You know, just a second fling red epoxy.
He's only ultraviolet.
Yeah, I just see you brought that one at a time.
And go over some other stuff while that's curing. When you're turning, always protect your lungs. And I know from personal experience, protect your face. A bowl that I've turning flew off and hit me in the forehead, and then bounced about 20 yards into the yard. And that night I ordered a mask off Amazon. Luckily it missed my glasses, otherwise I probably would have really been pissed. And this is what I use to press the metal fittings into the brass tubes. You just insert the parts in here, set the correct depth there, and we'll push them together.
So if you wanted to make a bed, what's the minimum amount of equipment that you have to have? This is an awful lot.
Did you say a bed?
Huh?
Did you say a bed?
A pen.
Oh.
Minimum amount of equipment.
You can get a,
Because you got your presser, you gotta have a lathe.
well, you can get by without doing this with some C-clamps and
Okay.
padding. You can get a cheap lathe off of Harbor Freight. You can get cheap turning tools off of Harbor Freight. You will need a mandrel or a turning between center set. And that just comes down to personal preference. Some pin turners like to turn between centers, which instead of having the rod that goes through, you just clamp onto the two ends and turn it. I've tried it, and we are at 95 there,
Some sandpaper. You could probably do it.
93.
Quick race, you know, you just
That's a shirt. Modified. Great.
off the grid, just hand race. Yeah.
Really? Clamp it to the table. Turn it on and just kind of hope for the big. Because they're square, right? So it's going to be knocking you around.
Take a long manual part and chuck it, and then you have like something else that's attached, but then it has a hole through that has a bearing.
Right. So both sides are like that. But still, you don't have the tool rest.
Oh, that makes
All right, we're coming up to the pour part. This is where,
99 and 96.
this is where the medley happens.
Oh, okay.
Up there, a lot of quick camera right into it, right?
And this is where your artistic preference is, whatever you want to, however you want to pour it.
Oh, yeah, that's how I'm my drinks.
It's all the wrist, all the wrist.
You sure you wanna get that close?
It's two colors, and now I'm going to add in the accent color.
And then it's next to God, it's sporty.
Now you're layering that on top?
Just kind of pouring it in, and it because of the force of pouring it, it doesn't just sit on top, it goes down. And then you can also take popsicle stick.
Oh, like
It's
start
like making fudge.
So you're swirling them together?
Yep.
Okay.
Slightly. I'm trying to mix them.
Yeah, you don't want them to just become a big mess.
Brown.
And put it on this nice
That's
little
what pins are brown.
caddy.
Okay.
Did you 3D print that caddy? 3D printer? How can you print a pen?
Yeah, but that's very safe.
Because 3D printing resin melts when you put it in the ring.
Why don't I just print a pen in finished form?
Won't look as good.
Sand away,
Exactly.
sand some more.
No, it wouldn't look so good. You'd have white plastic pens, who wants those?
And you tighten this up like a car tire.
More compression, the bigger the
Torque wrench.
That thing sucks.
So how much PSI you?
No, it blows.
Between 45 and 50.
Okay. And
And it's good, it's at 49. This is set to go off at 52. And now, I'm gonna go set it in the corner. I'm gonna go set it in the corner for the next 4 hours.
that's it.
That's what mom was doing.
Yeah.
It's only 4 pounds.
All right, any questions?
Pretty neat. Can you put like items in there too, like charms?
It wouldn't.
or, you know.
There's
Darts?
someone that does
Cheerios, not Cheerios.
like fishing
Yeah.
hooks
Right, yeah,
and cast them.
that'd be kind of neat.
If you want
Air bubbles.
Need like a thigh.
We don't want those.
Frogs.
Oh, I guess that would
Inclusions, you know, there's certain
Yeah.
objects you put in.
to, but usually if you're going to put things in it, it's going to be more of like a bottle stopper, where you have a bigger area and you're not cutting out the center.
Yeah,
That way you can do like there's people that do like beach scenes with
yeah. like
sand
tiny
and,
shells
and tiny shells in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Wood's popular too, like really nice woods.
yeah.
Like to mix them together.
Yeah, hybrids.
Cocobolo in there or something like that.
How does the guy drill through a fish hook? It's hardened steel.
No, he bends it around the tube
Oh,
and then cast over it, kind of like what I do with the cards. And then I also do circuit board pins, but I pay cheap Chinese labor for them to do that. Because
winning.
I can't do it for the price of it.
They love it. They love you.
They specifically print circuit boards just for putting on pin tubes.
So they phone home and then you got a security problem.
Anything else?
The faster you write, there's a light going on.
Could you, the Illuminite regular hardens extremely fast.
5
They
minutes.
have the slow, but this other resin, could you tell us about that one that you're using?
The Royal Palm resin,
Yeah.
it's made by a guy down in Florida. I just started using it in May. And it's an epoxy resin, but instead of mixing at 95 degrees, you have until about 125 degrees. So you got a lot longer to, if you want to do multiple colors, or like when I'm doing, I don't have to do colors when I do these, but I have a lot of little molds that I have to pour into. So the longer working time is a lot easier. I don't know what it's made out of. But it's also low VOC,
He
so
should
I could.
sponsor, he should have, sponsored you for this.
But
That's good info.
it's I got it because I also want to start casting in my house, like during the winter and during the summer. It's climate controlled in the house, and the Royal Palm resin is low VOCs, so you don't have to have.
Volatile organic compounds.
Fumes.
Yes.
Do you ever plan to upgrade to a bigger lathe?
Right now, no. I'm fine with my $500 lathe
Yeah,
versus.
that's the one I got.
Yeah.
I think there's a few things, if I ever wanted to turn those, I'd probably have to upgrade or something to that lathe.
If you want to do like larger bowls,
Well, you could get an extension to actually probably do a baseball bat, but it's more like wider, so.
Oh,
yeah. Then because of the distance between the spindle and the bed, you can only turn.
bottom out.
You can get like maple baseball bat length for like $20 or $30. I've always wanted to do one, but like you said, I thought that'd be good.
Have you experimented with any kinds of wood?
I have, as far as casting,
Yeah.
I haven't casted any. I've turned a lot of woods from around the world. Of course, the better looking ones are the burls, which cost more. But there's the figure in those are a lot nicer. I don't know if Not Larry has it on him, but last summer he went hiking and he had a walking stick that broke. So he gave it to me and I made a pin out of it. I mean, it's not fancy wood. It was a pine stick that he used, but
Means something to 'em.
it's one of a kind because of the sentimental value to him. That's something that pin turning lets you do.
Do you have any finished pens that you've made that?
Oh, yeah.
Look at?
I do. I have about 150 that may or may not go up on a table in the atrium tomorrow night.
Pass one around.
He wants it back.
That's a roller ball
Thank you.
with a. They sent me a few refills for roller balls that don't have to be capped for up to a year. Normally, a roller ball has to have the cap on it so it doesn't dry out.
Nice work. Very nice. You do more than just roller ball?
I do roller balls, fountain pens, regular ballpoints, and I've done one dip pen.
One of the slides you showed two blanks on the lathe at the same time. Is that because you were using a pattern to make them identical, or?
It's because it was a pen that had two tubes. So I was just turning both of them at the same time.
Oh, the top half and bottom
Yeah, the top part of the pen and the bottom part.
You doubled your efficiency right there.
Yeah.
half. How long did it take you to glue those 2mm cubes together?
It took me 3 nights, about 30 to 45 minutes each night, because I had to break it up, because what I did was I took 2 pen blanks and I cut them lengthwise and glued them up alternatingly, And then the next night, I took it and cut them the other way, so that it looked like, at the end, it looked like a little chessboard. And then the third night, I cut them all up and created the spiral.
That was
And
awesome.
then the fourth night is when I could actually turn it. All right, thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you.